Yeah. Okay, it's just after 6 o'clock, and so it's past the commencing time for the Central Goldfields Shire Council meeting for today, the 23rd of June. I welcome my fellow administrators to our meeting this evening, our CEO, our general managers, and a very special welcome to anybody who will be joining us this evening via Zoom and our live stream. It's great to have members of the public coming in. This is the second time that we have held our meeting in this way, and following recent amendments to the Local Government Act, which enables us to do so. And we are running our meeting consistent with the guidelines that have been provided by the Victorian State Government. We are live streaming the council meeting tonight using a system that complies with the Victorian Government's advice on minimising risk to cyber security. We will be operating tonight, as we did last month, with a revised set of meeting procedures that are consistent with the intent of our local law that governs the way that council meets and conducts its business. These procedures, for anybody who is interested, are available. We adopted them at the last council meeting, and they are available on our website. As administrators, we are all able to see and hear each other, and the community is also able to see this meeting. Now, should technical problems arise that disrupt the conduct of the meeting, if any of the administrators are not able to fully participate, the meeting will be adjourned until these technical issues can be resolved, or if not able to be resolved, the meeting will be rescheduled at a future date if that is the case. If, as chair, if I drop out from this meeting, I was going to say if I drop dead, but what I mean, if I drop out of the meeting, then Administrator Karen Douglas will become the chair and will take over the adjournment of the meeting, should that be required. If two or all of the administrators drop out during the meeting, it will automatically adjourn and for up to half an hour. If we can't resolve those problems, then the meeting will be adjourned until some future time. I should acknowledge this evening that our meeting is being handled and has been organised by our Manager of Governance, Property and Risk, and our Manager of Business Transformation, and my thanks to them for making sure that this evening goes smoothly. At the commencement of each regular council meeting, we acknowledge that we meet on Dja-dja-wurrung country. Tonight, our meeting participants are located on the traditional lands of the Dja-dja-wurrung, the Wathaurong, the Tanarung, Jawajali and the Djabbarung people. And if you're watching from home, you may well be located on traditional lands of other Indigenous groups. So tonight we acknowledge traditional owners from right across the country. We pay our respects to leaders past, present and emerging, recognising that they hold the memories, traditions, cultures and hopes of all Indigenous peoples. Our hope is that we might walk together in harmony and in a spirit of well-being. So as I open this evening's meeting, we will open with the council prayer as we traditionally do. Almighty God, we ask your blessing on this council. We ask that you direct and guide our work to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of the Central Goldfields Shire. If anybody who is watching our meeting via our Facebook live stream, and I hope you have been able to access the agenda for tonight's meeting. It is available on Council's website if you wanted to have a look at that and follow the procedures as we go through. But we will do our best to explain to you as we come to each item what it is and what we are dealing with. So the first item on tonight's agenda is apologies. We have none as we are all in attendance. There are no leave of absence noted. Does anybody have a conflict of interest they need to declare?
No.
No.
There is no conflict of interest to declare, so we'll move on immediately to item number 5 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous council meeting. And the recommendation here is to be found on page 3.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that council confirms the minutes of the council meeting held on the 26th of May 2020.
Okay, it's been moved. Do I have you going to second that?
I'll second that. I'll second that.
It has been moved and second. I'm going to ask you to vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 Against, that's carried. Thank you. Move on. Item 6 is reports from committees. There are none this evening. And item 7 is petitions. Again, we have no petitions this evening. Which we move on then to item 8, which is the Assembly of Councillors, and the recommendation in relation to this matter is on page 6 of the agenda.
And I would happily move the recommendation as it is on
Thank
page
you. It
6.
has been moved. Do I have a seconder?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Been seconded. So the motion is the council note the record of Assembly of Councillors for the period 16th of May 2020 to the 16th of June 2020. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 And therefore the motion is carried. Okay, moving on to the substantive matters in this evening's meeting. The first item is item 8.2, which is in relation to the Talbot Caravan Park. This report is an update on progress that's been made since we started discussing this matter back in December 2019. Trying to address the serious neglect and compliance issues around the health and safety of residents in the Talbot Caravan Park. We need to consider the future of the park with regard to its registration, but also the future governance of the park should council agree to re-register for a further 2 years. I would note as part of my introductory comments, if you are looking at the online agenda, there has been one minor change to the recommendations that are contained on page 12 of the agenda, where between items 1, 2 and 3, there is the word or. Those that have been removed. So the entire recommendation is items 1, 2 and 3 as listed on page 12. And we have, since this report was prepared, received a signed document from the Talbot Football Club, which is the agreement document which we now have in place. So there are a couple of minor adjustments to the agenda this evening. Now, I'm going to ask our Manager of Community Wellbeing if he wishes to comment in relation to this report.
So the only other additional thing which isn't in the report is just to update on some additional works that have taken place at the park in the last week. So we have further work done to install electricity safely to a further 2 sites, which will be completed on Thursday. And further work has been done to space the caravans out to meet CFA compliance measures around about spacing of parks under the guidelines.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And the ones of technology have just advised me that the online meeting agenda has in fact been updated. So those minor changes that I was referring to are already on the agenda on Council's website for anybody who is looking at them. So yes, do we have a motion on this one?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move in the event that Talbot Football and Netball Club carries out all the necessary improvements to the site in line with the schedule of works as determined by the council, that council agrees to the re-registration of the Talbot Caravan Park for 2 years from December 31, 2020 to December 31, 2022. In the event that the Talbot Football Netball Club does not carry out all the works necessary improvements to the site in line with the schedule of works as determined by council, that council notes that further report will be tabled at a future council meeting presenting options on the future registration of the park. And in the event that the Talbot Caravan Park is re-registered for a further 2 years from December 2020, that council notes the requirement for an independent rental market valuation to be undertaken to inform council's market strategy for the future operation of the park.
Okay, that has been moved and it has
And
now.
I will second that. I'll second that.
Mr. Delhunty, did you want to make some comments in relation to this matter?
Look, the General Manager of Community Wellbeing has covered most of the points, but a bit of history to this is that the Talbot Caravan Park is operated by the Talbot Football Netball Club and has done for many, many years. But unfortunately, it has a history of non-compliance with health and safety guidelines. And this council has done some work in relation to that, and also reports have been given by the CFA. But there's also been a lot of work done with not only the Talbot Football Netball Club, but also with park residents, with the local community, to get a greater understanding of the safety measures that are necessary at the park. It's also interesting to note that back in February this year, a community workshop was held to engage with the community about their thoughts on it. But all of them, I think, really highlighted that they're keen to see the caravan park continue. But to address the immediate safety concerns, we as a council spent money and purchased and installed at the caravan park in December this year a large tank to comply with the fire restrictions or fire necessary or requirements under the CFA to meet the fire concerns. But as I said, a further inspection was done this year in March by the CFA, and there's still a number of concerns that need to be met for this year. So as you've said, Mr. Chairman, there has been a lot of work done by our staff, by the Football Netball Club, by the community, but importantly now a formal schedule of works has been issued by the council. It has now been signed by the Football Netball Club by the president, which is Danny Murrell, and that's been signed on their behalf. And there has been work ongoing, which I'm pleased to say, and as the General Manager highlighted, that further work has been done in relation to power and also the spacing of the caravan parks. But importantly, they need to comply with the CFA guidelines, but importantly, the manager of the caravan park, which is Talbot Football Club, need to meet the schedule of works in time for the next report, which will go to council before the end of the year, because I think we all want to see the caravan park registered again in December, but importantly, they need to comply with that schedule of works and also the requirements of the CFA. So this is a common sense resolution, but I really implore the Talbot Football Netball Club to get on and do the work, because it's an important asset to the Talbot community, to the residents of there, but also to the Football Netball Club and to our Shire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Douglas, do you want to make any comments?
No, I think enough has been said. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, it's been a tortuous road, but we seem to be making really good progress. It's great to have those documents signed and presented to us this evening. So thank you very much to Mr. Collins on that one. Okay, I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against, that means that's carried. Thank you very much for that one. We will now move on to item 8.3, which is our small business charter. And the recommendation for this particular item, if people are following it online, is on page 15 of our agenda this evening. I think Council has demonstrated its commitment to working with our businesses in the Shire, and this agreement which we are approving this evening is a further demonstration. And in tonight's budget also there are a number of matters there which again reconfirms Council's commitment to working with our business community. But I guess that's particularly important. Now, this isn't focused on the current situation, but we are working very hard with our business community right now, trying to support them and enable them to move forward as we come out of the pandemic. So this report presents to Council the Small Business Friendly Charter, and this is for Council to adopt here this evening. The purpose of the Charter is to assist councils in creating a fair trading environment for the small businesses within our Shire. And so I commend this particular item to you. And as I say, the recommendation you will find on page 15 of this evening's meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that Council resolve to sign the Small Business Friendly Charter and authorise officers to implement the commitments within it.
Thank you very much. Do you have a seconder?
I do. I second.
Do you wish to make any comments?
Just a quick comment.
Mr. Delahunty.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, when COVID hit us, we established an economic recovery and response task force, and we did discuss this. Group was meeting every week. It's now meeting every fortnight, and we have discussed this small business friendly charter, and it was unanimous that they felt that the council should adopt this. There's a few things in it. One is to pay small businesses within 30 days of invoicing, also to streamline the approval processes when starting businesses, and that's already been implemented, and to help set up and support local business networks. So these are some of the things that are in this small business friendly charter, and I think it's a worthy document that will guide our council staff, but importantly get a greater cooperation between businesses within the community, our community in general, and the council. It's a very worthwhile document, and I congratulate the Victorian Small Business Commission in developing this charter, but which we will implement tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I hope you're all that okay. I've got a notice here to say my internet connection is unstable, so hopefully it's going to hold up as we go through. So we'll see how we go. But I was able to hear most of what Mr. Delahunty said. Mrs. Douglas, do you have anything you wish to add to that?
No, just to I'd support Mr. Delahunty's remarks. I was unaware really that the charter was something.
Hearing me?
Hardly. Are you hearing my response?
Yeah, we can hear both of you. Chair of Administrators Noel Harvey, you were frozen, but you seem to be coming back, and we can hear both of you.
Okay. Well, I'll be very brief. I totally support this. I think it's very timely, but okay, I don't think it was. I support it. I support it.
Just hang on a second. Just hold on a moment. I'm having trouble here. I didn't hear what you said there, Madam CEO. Can you repeat that for me, please?
Yes. So your internet connection is unstable and you are coming in and out. We can hear you, and we've been able to hear Administrator Douglas, but your connection seems to be unstable and you are freezing every now and again, but we can hear you.
It is cold, but I wouldn't say freezing. But anyway, I can see settle down again now, so we'll try and persist. So it has been moved and seconded. Ms. Douglas, did you have anything you wish to say? I missed it, but I gather from there that you actually said what you needed to say.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy this has come to council. I totally support that we are involved. Leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Look, I got it that time. Thank you very much. So So the motion is, and I hope it's quite clear, that Council resolves to sign the Small Business Friendly Charter and authorise officers to implement the commitments within it. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 Sorry. No, can we do that again, please? I didn't.
Through the chair, would you like me to read the motion?
Could you do that, please? Yes. We are running into troubles here.
I'll just read that motion again. I'll just get to that page, and it might give us a little time for the connection to improve.
Page 15 it is.
Yeah. So the motion was that Council resolved to sign the Small Business Friendly Charter and authorise officers to implement the commitments within it.
Thank you. So again, I'm going to ask you to vote. Mr. Delahunty has been stuck there with his hand up. I'm going to log out and then log back in and see if that helps. Can you hear me now, Lucy? I can see only 3 people.
Your internet connection still sounds unstable. So, Administrator Douglas, through the guidelines. I know.
He might be back.
Two of you.
There's two of him.
There's 2 of you. I have no idea how that happened. But well, here we go. We're right. Are we all back on board now?
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, now,
Yes.
did anything happen while I was away?
No,
No.
not yet.
So I read out the motion.
We read the
and
motion.
You
Okay.
need to have a vote on the
We
motion.
need to vote on it. So I'm going to say those in favour of the motion on page 15 say aye.
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 Okay, the motion is carried. Well, we got there. It's hard work, but we got there. Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is the planning, 2 planning applications we have in front of us this evening. And this is for the use of development of some land for a gold mine. Now, if people are reading this on our website and have downloaded the agenda, it may seem a little confusing. In fact, someone actually said to me they thought we'd made a mistake because we have the same item up twice. So I'm going to ask our General Manager, Infrastructure, Assets and Planning, if she will just explain what we have in front of us and why we have these 2 items that look so similar.
Thank you, Chair. Council has received 2 planning permit applications for the use and development of the land for mining and its gold mining and associated buildings and works in the Rural Conservation Zone and land subject to inundation.
Can you just hold on a moment, Rebecca? Can everybody hear that?
No.
No,
It's
sorry, I can't hear.
I think, Rebecca, you and I might be in trouble. It might be our end of our end of things that aren't too stable at the moment. So can we start again, please?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Council has received 2 applications for planning permits for use and development of the land for mining and its gold mining and associated buildings and works in the Rural Conservation Zone and land subject to inundation overlay. Both applications affect land known as 104 Parkers Road, Malaya. Application 14617 is for the western part of the land and application 14717 is for the eastern part of the site. Essentially, they are the same applications, they're just for 2 different parts of land on the same site. And the applicant has 2 separate respective licences for the land. Officers are recommending that the application be refused. The applications were both lodged in 2017 and council has not received the information required to assess the applications in that time since they've been lodged. And that's primarily an assessment against the Rural Conservation Zone. And probably more importantly or critically is that we've not received a cultural heritage management plan or adequate information to allow the exemption from needing a cultural heritage management plan. Given the time the applications have been with us and that we've had communications with the applicant since 2017 requesting that information and it hasn't been forthcoming, we're now recommending that the applications be refused because of the lack of information. That will allow the applicants, if they want to proceed with it, to lodge an appeal to VCAT, and VCAT will have to ask for that same information.
Okay, that was pretty difficult to hear. It sounds like you were reporting to us from down a gold mine, but I think we got the general gist that we do have in fact 2 applications, but the applications are different and are for the same application for 2 different parcels of land which are together on the site. So that, I guess, is a very simplistic version. So thank you for that. And I apologise if people are watching and are having some difficulty. I guess I take some comfort in the fact that our internet providers in our part of the world is substantially better than some of the more remote rural areas who I know have much greater problems than we do. So we will move on with this one. So the motion is in relation to this one item. The first item is on page 28. So somebody like to move that recommendation?
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation, which reads that council issue a notice to refuse planning permit application 146/17 for the use and development of the land for mining (brackets gold extraction) and associated buildings and works within the rural conservation zone and land subject to inundation overlay at Crown Allotment 24, Section 7, otherwise known as 104 Parkers Road, Malagal, based on the following grounds of refusal. Firstly, failure to provide evidence as required by the Aboriginal Heritage Act of 2006 and Aboriginal Heritage Regulation 2018 to adequately allow an informed determination on whether significant ground disturbance has occurred on the site. Secondly, failure to provide sufficient information to allow the proposal to be assessed against the rural conservation zone. I hope people could hear.
Yes, we could hear you quite clearly. Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded by Mr. Delahanty. Yes, it has been moved and seconded. Do either of you wish to make any comments on this one?
I would like to make a couple of comments, if you don't mind. Firstly, I'm really pleased that this has finally come to council. It's had a long journey, obviously, not convoluted. And I'm really disappointed. I really would have loved that we could have supported this. It's right up there near the welcome stranger, right in the middle of there's hosts of prospectors that come into our shire, particularly that part of our shire, yearly, hoping to find gold. And it would have been just such a romantic notion to be able to, at some stage, support some gold mining in our shire. It would have been fantastic. However, we must abide by what is required of us. And if that evidence could be somehow collated and presented, who knows? But unfortunately, regretfully, I'm very happy to support our planners, who I've got great faith in, and with some of the other changes that we've had in our organisation, with the better approvals process that we've now got an economic development officer, and we're really working hard to improve the turnaround times that we've had in planning. So in a sense, I think this is also a little bit of a moment in time that I believe this is probably our longest outstanding unresolved application. So unfortunately, we're unable to provide the required permit, and I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Delahanty. No, okay, so I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 Okay, that clearly is carried. Moving on then to item 8.5, which is similar, the same application for the same or next door piece of land. So we won't go through the explanations all over again. The recommendation is identical, so the motion will be very much the same. So I'll call for a motion to move that recommendation that is contained this time on page 45.
I think it's 41 on mine.
I think it's 45 on the printed one, unless something's happened since. 41?
Beg your pardon, on 41. So I'll move that council issue a notice to refuse planning permit application 147/17 for the use and development of the land for mining, gold extraction and associated buildings and works within the rural conservation zone and land subject to inundation overlay at Crown Allotment 24, Section 7, otherwise known as 104 Parkers Road, Malagal, based on the following grounds of refusal. 1, failure to provide evidence as required by the Aboriginal Heritage Act of 2006 and Aboriginal Heritage Regulation 2018 to adequately allow an informed determination on whether significant ground disturbance has occurred on the site. And 2, failure to provide sufficient information to allow the proposal to be assessed against the rural conservation zone.
Thank you very much. It has been moved and seconded. I'm going to put it to vote. Those in favour say aye. Against?
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you. Moving on now to item number 8.6. This is a matter in relation to sale of land in Majorca Road and where the existing skate park is located. As I introduced this particular item, the proposed construction of the new skate and scooter park contained in tonight's budget that we will be considering later on this evening. That piece of capital works is proposed to be funded in part by the sale of land that actually contains the existing skate park. The process for in relation to the sale of council land or council's assets must be in accordance with Section 189 of the Local Government Act. And given the sorry recent history that this council's had in relation to disposal of land, we need to make sure that we proceed very much in accordance with the law, and that's what we're doing this evening. The land that we have identified this evening the sale of which will help fund the new skate and scooter park is currently zoned for public recreation. And whilst we could in fact sell that piece of land with its current zoning, the use of that land for residential purposes would then be subject to permits and possible rezoning requirements. Obviously, then that would have a significant impact on the sale price of that land. So we're seeking submissions in this instance from the community in relation to the potential sale of this land before we put this land on the market. Now, clearly that will require some changes within the planning scheme and can take some time. The Act requires that there are some time constraints around when we advertise land for sale. So this is a preliminary step. Before the actual land comes on the market, after those planning issues have been resolved, council will be required again to advertise its intention within 12 months, I think the Act says, to our intention to sell that land. So this, I guess, is a two-step process. We want to test council, the community's views on this particular proposal, and this will then determine the way forward from here. So we're not actually proceeding at this point to sell the land. We are seeking to get council's, the community's views on that so that we can then put in place the planning requirements that will enable council to get the best possible return on that community asset available to us. So that's the background of this proposal that we're dealing with this evening. So the item we are dealing with, you will find the recommendation contained on page 45. I got it right this time. And so I will call for a motion to move that recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that council gives public notice under sections 189, 82A and 223 of the Local Government Act 1989 of the proposed sale of land in the appropriate newspapers and on council's website, and state in the notice that council proposes to sell the land located at 17 Majorca Road, also known as part of 40 Gilly Street, Maryborough. And secondly, receives public submissions during the 28-day notice period ending at 5 p.m. on the 24th of July. And thirdly, that a submission hearing on the proposed sale of land be held on Tuesday, the 11th of August, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. if required.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Delahunty. Have you seconded that, please, Mrs. Douglas?
I certainly will, and I do hope we do get some submissions around this. It's really important. I think that the community do get involved with this. It's quite important.
Indeed, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Delahunty, do you wish to make comments?
Just a couple more comments. You've covered it from the legal point of view, Mr. Chairman, but I want to bring the community back to the fact that the Skate and Scooter Park project was identified as a priority project for this council a couple of years ago. But it was in the meeting of the 25th of February 2020 this year that council endorsed a new skate park and scooter park design with a new location intended within Princess Park. Together, we made a financial commitment to facilitate the project. The report also noted that it would be a possible sale of the existing skate park land at 17 Majorca Road, Maryborough. So there are, as you outlined, many statutory requirements for council that we must comply with before we intend to sell the land. We're giving notice here. We want to hear the community's views. So it's important now that we advertise appropriately through the papers, through our website. And as in the motion says, we welcome input from the community, but this gives the council a great opportunity to update their skate park to world's best practice. As I said, there was an enormous number of young people within our community signed a petition to our council We put it in our priority project, and this is a next step to be able, our council, to deliver on this major project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Douglas, do you to make any comments?
No, I actually jumped in early, sorry.
You're forgiven. That's all right. Okay, thank you very much for that. I too would commend this. I think it is a very important step. Yes, we do need to renew our community assets from time to time, and this is a perfect opportunity to take a very worn out, tired, and sometimes quite dangerous facility to upgrade it to something that is really world class. And I want to commend our young people who took the initiative to drive this particular project very strongly. And if any of them are listening this evening, I know you're getting a little bit frustrated and I guess with the seemingly long delay, but unfortunately the wheels of government do move somewhat slowly from time to time. We will continue to pursue this, but I do encourage everybody to have a look at what is proposed and let us know your views in relation to this matter. So I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour, I won't read out the recommendation again. It's been read. It's a fairly long one. I'm going to put it to vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 That's carried. Thank you. Moving on now to item 8.7, which is a review of our procurement policy. Section 186 of the Local Government Act requires council to review our procurement policy each year. The policy was updated and adopted in July last year. It has been reviewed and it's been updated to ensure that it does still meet the needs of a modern, up-to-date local government organisation. So the recommendation in relation to this item is contained on page 52. I'll call for a motion.
And I would like to move the motion. Sorry.
Yep, that's okay. And it's been seconded. Mr. Delahunty, you better say I'll second that, please, if you could.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Just to make sure everybody can hear what we're doing. So the recommendation is that council adopt the updated privacy policy. That's what the motion is this evening.
Yes.
Excuse me, Chair, it's the procurement policy.
What did I say? Beg your pardon, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'm getting a bit excited here. That's the next one. The procurement policy on page 49. The council adopt the updated procurement policy. Thank you very much for pulling me into line there. Okay, I'm going to put it, if anybody has any wish to say on this one. No.
Just a couple of things that I think probably would be of interest. The policy will be represented in the new template that we're now using, and there has been some reorganising, tidying up and making it probably more usable, hopefully policy. But there's some clarifications I think that have gone in there. But I would like to comment about we've now increased the spend threshold for the second category in the procurement threshold, which will go from a threshold of 5,000 to 9,999, and that will be extended up to 19,999, which significantly reduces the percentage of items which will require the 3 written quotes. So that's going to really eliminate quite a lot of work for our staff, and it really reflects probably the movement in what the markets have done. It's in line with other councils. So I think that was going to be a very welcome move. And the other one was about a new definition of the local content, and that will bring an increase from 5% up to 10%. And again, I think that's a great move, particularly in our current climate, our economic climate. So for that is to support businesses that are based within our shire boundary, who have a branch based within the shire boundaries. But it was also an opportunity for us to ensure it meets recommendations out of our special report they undertook. And so it's gone to the Audit and Risk Committee, and I'm very pleased to support this motion.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Mr. Delahunty, did you have anything to say? No? Okay, I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour, the council adopt the updated procurement policy. Say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Got that. Okay, so that is clearly carried. Thank you very much for that. Okay, now we'll move on to the privacy policy. This is the recommendation that is page contained on page 50. Again, councils are, some of you who are keen council watchers will recall that we approved this policy some 2 years ago. No, last year. This time last year, it's one of those which we do need to update from each year. So the privacy policy that we're considering this evening complies with the Privacy and Data Protection Act. And of course, that's what we are required to do. But more importantly, it draws on the advice which we've been given from the Office of the Victorian Information Commissioner, who has examined many local government privacy policies right across the state, including our own. I'm very pleased that the comment of the Privacy Commissioner in relation to our earlier policy, he said, the contents is comprehensive and the way the policy is written is of a high standard. So I think that we'll take that as a pat on the back from the Privacy Commissioner or his office at least. And but of course, it doesn't mean that we are necessarily, it is perfect. So we do need to review it. And this evening we are doing just that. So the recommendation in relation to this matter is on page 52.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that Council adopt the updated privacy policy.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do I have a seconder? Yes.
I second that.
Yes, seconder. Thank you very much. Mr. Delhunty, did you have anything you wish to say on this one?
I want to clarify one thing, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is we have to do this, update our policies, this policy every 2 years. And as in the report said, we adopted this old policy was adopted in May 2018. And so it was scheduled to be reviewed in May this year, which we've done. You've covered some of the points that I was going to mention. I really compliment the staff and that in relation to that. But I also want to remind people that we have presented this updated policy to the Council's Audit and Risk Committee back in early June this month, and they've recommended that Council adopt this updated policy. So it has been reviewed, it has been updated, it is now fit for purpose and aligns with best practice. So I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to say anything?
Nothing to add that it's not been covered, I think. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to then put it to the vote. The vote is that Council, whoops, I get the right one. I'm getting a bit keen here and I'm flicking over the pages too quickly. The Council adopt the updated privacy policy. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 Thank you, that's carried. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 8.9. It's another one of these, I guess in some people would consider rather dry policy matters that we need to deal with from time to time. But our public interest disclosure policy does need to be updated to reflect the changes in legislation, and that those changes in legislation came into place on the 1st of January this year. So we are moving simply to update our policy in line with the latest legislation. So the recommendation in relation to this one is on page 55.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that Council 1 adopts the updated public interest disclosure procedures and secondly, revoke the protected disclosure policy.
Thank you very much.
I second that.
Been moved.
I second that.
Yes, I got that. Has it been moved and seconded? Mr. Delhunty, did you wish to make any comments?
A couple of quick comments. The protected disclosure policy was last adopted in the 24th of April 2018, and the changes, as you've already highlighted, reflect the changes of legislation which have happened in State Parliament. So again, we've gone through a process of reviewing this. We've also put it to the, I believe we've put it to the Audit and Risk Committee. That was also on the 1st of June this year, and they've recommended that we adopt this with no changes from the draft that they saw. So again, this public interest disclosure procedures document has been reviewed, it has been updated, and it ensures that it is and aligns with the changes of the Public Interest Disclosure Act of 2012. So again, I support the recommendation and support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Douglas.
Just a comment probably that I think it's a very comprehensive policy that we now have, and it almost is a manual for people who may have reason to want to know what they ought to be doing. So I think this should cover pretty much anybody's queries or a need to get some guidance about what they might want to be able to do. So I really think it's very good.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I've just got to jump in. I have to say that policies are very, very important, not only for our council, but for our staff and for our community. And one thing I've been pleased about is that we as a council, since we've been appointed, have reviewed, updated, and brought in a lot of policies. So they are very, very important documents. And this is another step forward for this council.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it is. We have, I guess, we seem to have spent an awful lot of time dealing with policies, but that was part of the job that we had to do. But we have. I was looking at the list the other day, and with there's an extensive list of work that has been done in terms of our policies and procedures, and I think we've got it down. We're going pretty well in that regard, and now getting to that point of the next stage as we start to review those and make sure they're up to date, so that when we hand them over to an incoming council, they will be as up to date as they possibly can be. So the motion is that it's on page 55, that council adopt the updated public interest disclosure procedures and revoke the protected disclosure policy. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 That's clearly carried. Thank you very much for that one. Okay, moving on to our item 8.10, which is our May finance report. Under the Local Government Act, we are required to have a statement comparing the budgeted revenue and expenditure with the actual revenues and expenditure, and we are required to have those reports come to us every quarter. We in fact receive these each month from our finance department. That enables us to keep a very close eye on the progress of our budget and so on. And so again, this is a regular part of the council meeting where we receive the updated, in this case it's the May finance report, and it's very close to the end of the financial year. I just should at least ask Mr. Brumby if he has any comments that he wishes to make. I didn't give him any warnings I might be asking, but is there any comments there, Mr. Brumby, that you do wish to make in relation to the May financials?
Thank you, Chief Administrator. No, the May financials are looking very good. The operating statement is within 0.5% of our turnover. So to have the budget running so close to the overall budget at this time of the year is a very reassuring thing. Obviously, the year is fast closing in. We've only got one more week to go, and it certainly looks as if we're going to finish the year very close to where we predicted.
Good to hear that, and yeah, it's a testament to our team that they monitor these things as closely as they do. So thank you very much for that one. So the recommendation in relation to our finance report is contained on page 62 of the agenda this evening.
I would just like to make a comment if Chief Administrator.
Yep, that's okay. Can you move
it? I'm moving it.
Yeah,
first I'll move it.
Yes, thank you. It's been moved. Yeah. Mr. Hunter, you're happy to second that?
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Mrs. Douglas, you're happy to go now.
It was just really, the whole year we're reporting about this. We really had grants in, grants out, grants we won, grants we were unsuccessful with. And that has really continued right through this year. And here we are just a couple of weeks off, and the budget's going to hopefully land pretty well. So I think well done to all involved there. Some of the grants, in fact, that people will have heard that we have been successful, or we've apparently been awarded, until we see that money come in, will not be included in these particular statements. So there are a couple that are in there, and that one of those, of course, is the Federal Assistance General Purpose Grant. So we've had a very hefty component of that, which has arrived quite recently. And the other one is we've already received 50% of the Federal Assistance Local Roads Grant. So those grants are in fact here in these, in the figures before us tonight. But some of the other responses to a stimulation for getting people into work and associated with the COVID-19, they're not included as yet. They will actually appear later on. But we are probably seeing just the very early sort of movement coming from the impact of the measures that Council has put in place to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19, and that's mainly probably about delayed payments of the rates and the charges. We aren't able to come up with a definitive amount at this stage, which is just too early for us to assess, but there will be a final figure will be included in the annual report. So Thank you. That's really all I wanted to
Okay.
make mention of.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dale-Hunt, did you wish to make a comment on this one?
No.
No. Okay, I'm going to then, the recommendation is on page 62, and that is that council receives and notes the 31 May 2020 financial report showing progress against the budget. Those in favour say aye.
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 Yes, that's carried. Thank you. Moving on now to item 8.11, which is our proposed budget for the coming year. The Local Government Act of 1989 requires councils to prepare a budget that contains a range of requirements, and the budget that we are considering tonight meets all the requirements of the Act. We are considering a budget for the coming year, and after its adoption this evening, it will be then made available for community comment before it comes back to council for final adoption, where we incorporate any comments that may be made back to us from the community. The budget that we are considering this evening is a responsible budget, and I need to point out that it does continue to implement the objectives that were laid out in council's financial plan, council's plan, the 2017-2021 council plan that was actually refreshed after consultation with our community back in 2018, when we fairly soon after we arrived here. Now, this is a very, very important document that actually does set the agenda really for the next 12 months. So I'm going to ask our CEO if she would like to make some introductory comments to this item this evening.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to first note that the budget has been prepared during such uncertain times with COVID-19, and the Minister did allow the budget to be adopted by the end of August rather than the end of June, to allow council's time to consider the impact of COVID-19. We have financial measures in place until 30 September, which were announced during COVID-19, and these will be reviewed again at that time, as we know that there is still uncertainty around the impacts of COVID-19 on the local community and business. The budget this year includes a significant capital works program of $15.9 million. A significant part of this has been funded through state and federal government funding, and some of that has been directly in response to COVID-19. And we hope that these projects will help stimulate the local economy and aid recovery for our community. The rate rise in the budget is set at 2%, which is in line with the local government minister's direction, and will enable us to continue delivering the 40+ services to our community. Key capital projects that are in the budget this year include a major upgrade to the Maryborough Outdoor Pool, upgrades to the Central Goldfields Art Gallery, repairs and upgrades to halls across the Shire, including $225,000 for upgrades at Talbot Town Hall. There's a $3 million road renewal program and $181,000 for footpaths, for new and renewed footpaths across the Shire. We'll also continue to do work on planning and design, and the amount of planning and design that has been undertaken over the last 2 years has enabled us to be successful in the grants that I mentioned earlier. And so we'll continue to plan ahead so that we are in a position when grants come available to implement projects that are very important to the community. Two that I'd like to mention are planning for a splash park, which we've heard from a number of community members that they would like to see a splash park, and also planning and design for a youth hub. There's also included master planning for the Phillips Garden, and also for the Maryborough Railway Station. There's also included in the budget development funds to develop a reconciliation action plan, and also a climate adaptation plan. Again, two plans that we've heard from our community that are very important and we need to continue with. So there's some of the key items that are in the budget. The details are in the council report tonight, and also the attachment to that report has got all the detail of the budget. And written submissions are invited from the community. The community can put written submissions in up until Friday the 24th of July. And there'll also be a hearing if required, so that anybody that puts in a submission can present their submission to the administrators. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now I will have a few comments which I'm going to make in a moment. Before I do that, to make sure we follow the proper procedures, I'm going to ask for a motion to the motion this evening's recommendation is on page 71. Mrs. Douglas, it may be worthwhile, I think, given the importance of this particular matter, that I ask you perhaps to read it.
Read it.
Good. I know it's
I
long,
say that.
but I think it is really important for those people who are following us this evening actually understand what we're talking about here this evening. Our CEO has introduced a number of I guess the sexy elements of the budget, but of course there's some very there's a lot of hard work behind the budget, which is not quite so trash. So I think it would be worthwhile to take the time this evening to read the full recommendation, that if someone wants to follow it on page 71 of our agenda. Thank
you. I'm happy to do that. So our recommendation is point 1, the council, in accordance with section 129 of the Local Government Act 1989, give public notice of the 2020-2021 proposed budget, including the strategic resource plan and the proposed rates, fees and charges, and place the attached document on public display for a period of at least 28 days as required under the Act. Point 2, the council invites submissions on the 2020-2021 proposed budget, including the strategic resource plan and the proposed rates, fees and charges in accordance with section 223 of the Local Government Act 1989. Point 3, that submissions on the 2020-2021 proposed budget be received until close of business at 5 p.m. on Friday the 24th of July 2020. Point 4, that a submission hearing on the 2020-2021 proposed budget be held on Tuesday, the 4th of August 2020 at 5:30 p.m. 5, that the proposed budget, including the strategic resource plan and the proposed rates, fees and charges prepared for the 2020-2021 financial year for the purposes of section 126 and 127 of the Local Government Act 1989 be presented at an additional meeting of council for consideration on Tuesday, the 11th of August 2020 at 6 p.m.
Thank you very much for that. That is the motion that has been moved. We'll have a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Delahunty. It has been moved and seconded. Now I'm going to make a few comments myself in a moment, but I invite either of you to make comments if you wish.
Well, I think it's an extraordinary time, an extraordinary budget, and an extraordinary capital works program. So it's going to be a very, very busy year ahead, or years ahead. It won't all be achieved, of course, in 12 months. But it's going to be an exciting ride, I think. And I'll leave my other colleagues to add their piece as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Delahunty.
Mr. Chairman, look, I'd like to make a couple of quick comments. I think there's been a lot of work putting into this budget. It has been highlighted by our CEO. We've got nearly $15 million capital works budget, which is a lot more than we've ever had before. And we do thank the state and federal governments for their support in doing that. But it will require a lot of work to be done by council officers, particularly to manage these projects. And no doubt they'll need to have some support to do that. But as the CEO highlighted, there are many highlights in the budget. Some of the ones I want to talk about are the significant upgrades to our road network through Council Regional Roads Victoria and the Roads to Recovery funding. And that's to the tune of nearly $3.5 million. But one the CEO mentioned was the restoration of the Maryborough outdoor pool. It's $2 million. It was one of our projects that we have talked to many government people about in the last couple of years. It is fantastic to get the money offered to us, and I think that'll be a great fill up for the Maryborough community and the Shire of Central Goldfields for sure. But I think we went through the town planning, the township revitalisation programs that we've had, and there's nearly $800,000 for the small towns across our Shire for various projects, whether it be shade structures, hall improvements, playgrounds. There's a lot of money to go out to those type of things. But one of the things we've got out for public consultation at the moment is a recreation and open space strategy. We've got some money in there to help in the implementation of that. I also want to say, though, that there is I try to look after the southern towns in the Shire. And I have to say it's really pleasing to say now, after a lot of planning work's been done, that we've got nearly over $200,000 allocated to upgrade the toilets at Talbot. They not only meet the current day standards, but also, well, they'll meet future standards because they don't meet disabled people's ability to get into the toilets here. So it's about time that they were done, and I'm pleased to see that we've got it in the budget. I know every time we go to Talbot, people talk about the wastewater there. So we've got money to do a wastewater plan that we hopefully will be taken up by governments and the council in the future. But also at Talbot, the culvert, curb and channel renewals, there's work to be done there, as it is in Majorca with unsealed roads renewal, and Daisy Hill with minor culverts, unsealed roads renewal. So there's money right across the Shire, but as I come back to the point before, it's nearly about $15 million of our capital works program. There's a lot of work there, a lot of work for our staff. And I do note the General Manager of Corporate Performance sent an email around to our staff to start planning, and I can implore the staff to get on, do the planning work, and hopefully you can implement this over the next 12 months. But I also note, we just want to make one quick comment, Mr. Chairman. The fees and charges is one we've also gone through, and there are some minor changes there to assist people that operate at the Talbot market. Unfortunately, it's not able to run at the moment, but hopefully it'll be going soon. So right down to fees and charges, that we've gone over them in fine detail, and there is some good news there for all people concerned. Thank you, and I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Delahunty. You could almost convince me you were a Daisy Hill councillor there. I'm very impressed. I would just like to make, before we put it to the vote, I would just like to make a couple of comments, perhaps broader comments this evening. From where I sit, this budget is a very exciting step forward in the history of the Central Goldfields Shire. It's a quantum leap in our budget processes, and it's one that I think will benefit the community for many, many years to come. But of course, we still have some work to do. Our systems, our internal systems and our financial systems are nowhere near as good as they need to be. We are still working on that, and Mr. Brumby and his team are working very hard to continually improve our systems to enable us to improve our budgeting processes even further. As I said in the introduction, our budget this evening is very clearly linked to the priorities of our community that are expressed in the council plan. We reviewed that council plan very early on in our time, and we went through a very extensive community consultation processes to do that. And this, I'm delighted how closely this particular budget does in fact follow our council plan and the priorities that were set at that time by the community. This is our largest non-flood budget in the Central Goldfields Shire's history. It's a massive investment in infrastructure, around over $15 million of investment in capital works. Other than the flood budgets, that must be some sort of a record for the Central Goldfields Shire. And like Mr. Delahunty, I would acknowledge the state and the federal governments for the extraordinary work and commitment they have shown to the Central Goldfields Shire and our local representatives who have worked so hard on our behalf. I do want to touch briefly on the 2% rate increase, because that's not an easy decision that we had to make. There, of course, have been calls for us to freeze our rate increases. And that is something that we did consider, as I know many councils have. Now, I want to make it really clear that we do understand that there are many people in our community who are doing it really tough. We understand that, but there are also many in our community who are not. A rate freeze that has been suggested by some would really provide a free hand pass to large corporations in our shire, such as our supermarkets. And I don't think too many people in our community, I don't want to pick on the supermarkets, but I don't think too many people would say that we should be freezing the rates that are paid by those large businesses, such as corporations as Woolworths and Coles and so on. They have done quite well out of the current crisis. And I don't think, and we don't think, that it would be fair to give them a free pass like that. There are many people in our community too who have not necessarily lost their jobs, whose circumstances haven't necessarily changed or haven't been particularly disadvantaged by the current circumstances that we are all in. We've all been inconvenienced, but many have not, in fact, been disadvantaged. Again, it would seem unfair that we should be giving some sort of free pass to those members of the community who have not been impacted by the current circumstances. So what we have done is to strengthen and broaden our hardship provisions so that any ratepayer, business or individual, can come to personal arrangements with the Shire to ease the burden that they may be facing right now as a result of the circumstances in which we find ourselves. We want to help those people who need a hand. We don't want to give free passes to those ratepayers that do not need that support. So we are committed to implementing those hardship provisions. And for those people who believe we should be making extra assistance available to them, I urge people to come and talk to us, because we do have the capacity to give a hand up to those people in our community who really do need it. Now, I would love to go through the long list of really exciting initiatives that are contained in the first few pages of our budget, but I'm not going to do that. Our CEO has covered many of them. But I would strongly encourage everybody to go and have a look at the budget. If you don't want to read all the financial columns, just go and have a read of the first couple of pages, which outlines really clearly, really simply, what are the initiatives that we're going to be driving as a Shire in the coming year. And I encourage everybody again, please make a submission, call us, let us know what you think about what we are proposing. Have we got it wrong? Should we have included something? Of course, there will be many things that we would like to include but haven't been able to. So we do encourage you very much to do that. In closing, before we put this to the vote, I do want to congratulate our finance team, led by Mr. Murray, our General Manager of Corporate Performance. I know that we have improved our systems over the last year. You've had to work with that while preparing the budget as well. But as I said, we still have a way to go to make sure that we can improve the capacity of your team to deliver budgets in the future. Developing a budget that you know will be criticised by some and praised by others, and it can be a thankless task. So, Mr. Brummy, I want to say thank you to you and your team, and can you please take back these comments on behalf of all administrators, how we much appreciate the work that you have done. I think you should be proud of it, and I know that you do look forward to the comments from the community that may in fact help to improve our budget even further. So please, Mr. Brumby, take those comments back to your team. They are very, very genuine. Commander CEO, thank you, because you lead the organisation. It's a tough gig in this current environment. Producing a budget like this is really difficult. And I don't think anybody should underestimate the amount of work that's gone in. Yes, there'll be lots of people out there who want to pull things apart, and that's fine. That's what the communities help do to hold us to account. And I don't have any problem with that at all. And I really do look forward, as I know the entire team do, look forward to receiving comments and feedback from the community in relation to this budget. Okay, I'm going to put this on. I'm not going to read out the long motion again. It is contained on page 71 of our agenda this evening. It was read out by Mrs. Douglas before. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And therefore that is clearly carried. And I thank you very much for that. Okay, we're getting towards the end of our agenda this evening. There are no items for the use of the common seal. There are no notices of motion that we need to deal with this evening. There is no urgent business listed, and there is no conflict of business. So the only item that's left on the agenda this evening is item number 13, which is to close the meeting. So I'm going to close the meeting. I thank you all for your attendance. I particularly thank members of the public. If you've persisted and hung in through for the last hour and 10 minutes to watch through what I guess is exciting for some of us, but boring for many, I thank you for your patience, and I hope this has been informative, and we certainly do look forward to hearing your comments in relation to our budget in the coming 28 days. I now declare the meeting closed at 7:11 p.m.